Welcome back to Throttles Bottles, a show about rides, risks, and the people bold enough to do both. I'm your host, Brad Miller, and I'm joined today by Dallas Poore. Today's episode is a deeply personal one, and as a warning, the topic includes discussions of mental health and suicide. Dallas sits at a really powerful intersection of motorcycles, service, and purpose. He's a former Marine Corps officer and the founder of the Warriors of the Wind Foundation, a nonprofit that uses motorcycles as a literal vehicle for veteran mental health, purpose, and connection. Dallas isn't just talking about riding, he's building a nationwide motorcycle battalion of veterans and telling their stories through film, movement, and brotherhood. This episode is about healing without lectures, connection without pressure, and what happens when people feel alive again. If you ride, if you've served, or if you've ever needed two wheels to quiet your head, this one's for you. So pour yourself something to drink, sit back, and enjoy this look into a life-changing organization with a man who's turning movement into meaning. Dallas, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, man. This is
Absolutely.
Great.
Every good story starts with a drink, so before we dive in, it's time for the first pour. It's the part of the show where we crack open whatever the guest picked, kick back, and let the story start flowing. Today looks a little different. Dallas doesn't drink anymore, so instead of bourbon or wine, we're cracking open cold bottles of Coke. And we actually have a Throttles Bottles custom-made bottle opener, which is awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Love it, man.
You want to open yours?
All right, now I got to test this thing. Never used it yet.
It worked well.
All right.
There we go. All right. This show isn't really about alcohol. It's about what you sit down with, what helps you slow down, and what opens the door to an honest conversation. So today's first pour is about clarity, presence, and choosing something that keeps you grounded. Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Delicious. So now that we've got something to drink, let's begin. I want to go back to the beginning. Before we talk about motorcycles, foundations, or missions, I want people to understand where you come from. So you grew up in Villisca, Iowa?
Villisca, Iowa, yeah.
Small towns tend to shape people in specific ways, a strong sense of responsibility, but also a lot of expectations. Mm-hmm. Did you always feel a pull towards something bigger than yourself?
Kinda. I would say yes. Definitely servitude's always kind of been in me. I didn't really know. I was kind of missing direction at first when I was kind of, okay, am I going to college? I don't really want to do that, and everybody's got a story. I ended up getting one particular scholarship that I said, if I get that one, I'm going to go to college. And it was the memorial scholarship for my best friend who had killed himself. So that was my launch into a crazy journey that ended up, in the Marine Corps and doing what we're doing now. So,
wow. Well, that leads perfectly into my next question. You're a former Marine Corps officer and a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, so I want to talk about that. Why the Marine Corps specifically?
Well, I got Toys for Tots as a kid, so that definitely was inspiring at a young age. I remember it clear as day. And so when I eventually got my commission, I actually stood at a Toys for Tots bin, and you're not really supposed to do that as a lieutenant, but I kind of insisted on it. So that was a fun one. But the uniform, the tip of the spear type mentality, the folklore, the cult, mindset, all the things, man.
Yeah, I think if you talk to any former Marine or current Marine, they'll say the same thing. It's the best uniform, it's the best haircut, it's the best tradition.
It's just the truth, man.
Yeah. Do you think by joining, were you running away from something, running towards something?
Definitely running
Maybe
towards. Yeah.
Awesome.
I wanted to come out to California. I just had a pull for that, and here I am. Well, yeah. The things lined up.
Yeah, absolutely, including this, which is incredible.
This is awesome, man.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed with this backdrop.
Yeah. How old were you when you commissioned? Were you just straight out of college?
Make me do math. It was December of 2000, about 22.
Okay, yeah. So young.
Yeah, real young.
How prepared did you feel when you commissioned?
In most ways, I felt pretty good. I was no OCS all-star. I'm lucky I survived, like a lot of us are. But by the time I got bars pinned on, I got my degree, I was ready to go embark on the journey of actually becoming a Marine Corps officer, which is 6 months of really intensive training after you get commissioned. I'm sure you know all this. But Quantico, Virginia, where Marine officers are made, once we ended that training, you feel pretty ready to do whatever's required. So
yeah. I didn't realize that you had gone through OCS as well, and that's how I commissioned. And what a lot of people don't realize is Navy Officer Candidate School is ran by Marine Corps drill instructors. which is not a fun experience to find out when they come around the corner that first day. And it's just like the movies.
I love that.
It's a unique experience.
I'm going to go back home and watch Officer and Gentleman now.
Yeah, absolutely. So you didn't just serve, you led, and leadership carries weight, as any leader will tell you. What did leadership mean to you as a Marine officer?
Well, there's basically be technically and tactically proficient as one of the things that guides us, lead by example. And I'll be honest, I ended up in a very technical MOS that was pretty overwhelming to walk into. 27 helicopters, 300 Marines that are in one way or another my responsibility. And it was a lot to take in, but just being able to have the connection with those Marines and have them see that I cared about them, I kind of just focused on them and they focused on the mission, and eventually I learned the things that I needed to and stuff. But if you don't listen to your troops, you're not going to do very well. And that was an MOS that was my focus. I listened a lot. I asked a lot of questions, let them kind of lead me on some things. And that's how I became a decent leader. So,
yeah. What was the hardest part of having that responsibility over others?
I'd say the first time I really realized what that responsibility looked like was in a scud bunker, taking fire. And, in the Marine Corps we talk a lot about burden of command. And it's one of those things that you can talk about it, you can read about it, you can think you understand it. But in the moment, when I'm deciding, okay, I think we're all clear, they're saying we're all clear, but if I tell these Marines to leave the bunker, they're, open to whatever hits us. So in that moment, I kind of realized, okay, now it's real. This is the burden of command.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to carry on your shoulders.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of young officers, I had the same experience. I was 24 when I commissioned, so a little bit older, but you don't really understand what's going to be asked of you until you're there. And your sailors or your Marines are barely younger than you. Some are even older than you.
Oh, yeah.
And they look to you immediately, especially in times of crisis. And there's no training in the world that can really prepare you for that and being able to make those command decisions in a crisis situation.
I got like 20 stories bouncing around my head right now thinking about that stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. Something for me, I think a lot of good leaders are good at taking care of others, but not necessarily themselves all the time. Were you good at asking for help back then?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I sought mentors a lot. Mentors that would tell me, hey, I saw you, say this thing to somebody, it didn't sound quite right, or, you could have led this meeting differently, or, my Marines gave me a lot of feedback. I asked for it, and if I screwed up, I wanted them to tell me and teach me. So, did I answer your question? Sometimes I kind of trail off a little bit.
Yeah. On the topic of, because obviously this is leading towards discussions of mental health and stuff, and not a lot of people have either an instinct for it or training or communication to ask for help, especially at a young age, especially at a leadership position at a young age.
Yeah.
And the burden of not just taking care of yourself, but everyone around you. And were you good at that at a young age, or was that something that kind of came later?
Well, it kind of boils down once again to lead by example, and you are supposed to, take good care of your body, take good care of your mental health, all those things, because you're leading these people, telling them to do the same. So it's hard to say, make sure you shave this morning if I haven't shaved myself, that kind of stuff. So I definitely stuck to that. I think I was pretty good at asking for help, to answer your question. There were things that I kept to myself, and the things that I struggled with that nobody knew about.
Yeah.
But I think that's everybody for the most part.
Yeah.
You got your things that your hang-ups on occasion.
And what years were you, in the intro I said that, you're an Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran. What years were you deployed over there?
2003, initial invasion.
Wow.
So kicked it off. I landed in Kuwait February 10th, 2003. So our first several weeks there, I was actually attached to another Marine Corps unit. I'd had a emergency surgery that caused a bunch of debauchery with what I was supposed to do. But I attached to another unit, ended up being an advanced party for Operation Iraqi Freedom. So we were there about 3 weeks before my actual unit got there. So we built up the base camp and got to see the build up to a war. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
You hear World War II guys talking about what they saw as they were preparing for the invasion, how the massive scale of what we were doing. I can't imagine that, especially after what I saw, leading up to Iraqi freedom, because we're a very powerful country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of muscle there. So
Absolutely. How long were you in the Marine Corps for?
my active duty years were 2000, 2005.
Okay.
So OCS 98, 99.
Okay. So when the uniform comes off, I think the weight doesn't always disappear, and a lot of times it actually increases. And for a lot of people, that transition is not a smooth process.
Right.
It's pretty rough. Something I'm not looking forward to in the future for myself. But when your time in the Marine Corps ended, what did that transition feel like for you?
I was actually pretty lucky. I had been headhunted into a theoretically pretty good company. I'm not going to call them out here, but there were, let's just say the corporate culture for a large corporation, a really large corporation, is very different than the Marine Corps. So, like integrity, depends on the shareholders.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that going on, and I went in there and I tried to be a catalyst for change. I tried to, leave my mark, and it was working to a point, but I realized this company wasn't going to change, and they were not good to their people. They were not good to the companies they were working with, and eventually I kind of went, this doesn't align with my personal values, so I ultimately left because of integrity reasons.
Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of veterans, obviously I don't want to make a blanket statement, say all military or veterans are necessarily moral, ethical people, but I think that's something that the military, specifically the Marine Corps, teaches and preaches and kind of ingrains at a lot of people, is the moral compass, an ethical thing, especially on the officer side where we take that oath,
Absolutely.
it's anchored in ethics. But a lot of veterans talk about losing structure more than anything else when they get out.
Yeah.
What are the hardest things that you had to deal with?
For me, I was pretty, you hear Marine Corps and how we talk, I was that guy, walking down the hallway, instead of hello, you say kill, stuff like that. So, rah, all the things, And so that was kind of an adjustment for me. I walked down the hall, wearing a suit and tie kind of environment, and I'm like, rah, and I'm like, wait.
Good morning.
good morning, sir, So there was a period of time where that was kind of an irritation to those around me, and it was kind of a learning curve for me that, okay, I can't do that here. So I had to just kind of blend in and not say a whole lot there for a while. It took some time, but the guy I shared an office with, his brother had been a Marine, which made him like more sensitive to okay, I don't want to hear raw anymore.
Yeah.
So
I've definitely been on both sides of that, where the military lingo and kind of outlook on stuff is immediately like a connection with people, but then I've also been on the side where I'm like, all right, man, chill out.
Yeah, get the horseshoe haircut.
Yeah, exactly. So from the outside, things can look fine, but on the inside, things can be completely different. Looking back now, when do you think things started to get kind of heavy for you after you got out?
I think that job was probably the beginning of, everybody's got their mental health journey,
Right.
We can call it 100 different things, but at the end of the day, you're born, you die, and you have a journey in between. And I would say that job, honestly, I'm driving home thinking about people calling me saying that we're putting them out of business and stuff like that. And as a Marine, that hurt me. I'm like, okay, that's not the right thing to do.
Especially being from a small town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point. So that culture shift and not treating people well was really hard for me because I'm watching, career employees get laid off to make the numbers, that kind of stuff, being, crying, being let out of the building. And so that really did put me on a pretty bad path there for a while, but I was only there for 9 months. So I saw what was happening. I tried to intervene. I tried to report things that needed to be reported, and I did. Nothing changed, and finally I went, okay, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
So just the transition from integrity is everything to integrity is when you need it or something like that.
Or when other people are looking.
Yeah, that was really hard for me. So moving past that, I end up working in construction, worked at this great engineering firm as a construction manager type, and went back on the base, Camp Pendleton, building stuff. Just being back on the base and working around Marines, building things for Marines, that definitely improved my mental health dramatically compared to sitting in an office and basically ripping people off through corporate rules and regulations. So I did that and helped grow an engineering firm into a construction firm, and it was really a beautiful thing to be a part of. It was kind of, they call it entrepreneurship. So I'm helping this company grow into something massive, but I'm just an employee, you know.
Yeah.
So pretty soon after that, I ended up starting my own firm. After 7 years of working for that firm, I opened my own after I got my MBA, blah, 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 and that launched me into my own business. So I ran a construction consulting firm for, well, I'm still technically running it. Started that in 2012. So the entrepreneurial spirit led me to this, and you know, that company I started because I wanted to put disabled veterans to work. I wanted to have guys out there building buildings and being around other veterans, and I wanted a platoon of 24 veteran-centric company and go out there and do good things on the base and whatnot. So we did that for a little bit. Didn't get very big, but kind of ebbed and flowed, and then finally I landed on, I'm going to try this nonprofit thing.
Yeah.
And this, focusing on mental health, helping other people, is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm also substitute teaching, so there's that.
Helping in every way.
Yeah, I'm doing my best.
And we'll get into the nonprofit and Warriors of the Wind here in a little bit. But a lot of people don't realize they're struggling until they've been carrying it for a long time. It kind of bubbles over. Were you good at talking about what you were dealing with back then, or did you kind of do what a lot of veterans do, which is just bottle it up, keep moving forward?
I would say mostly bottled up. Definitely. I bottled it up for the most part. It has a lot to do with the people you spend time around. I can't elaborate too much on some of those things, but I kept a lot of things inside, and then I had a couple of close friends that helped me kind of navigate those storms. And after a while, I realized that I was kind of going through it, especially on the depression front. What really got me was when my Marines started dropping back on American soil. So there was the combat losses, which I was tracking very closely. And when I saw that I'd served with 30 Marines that are no longer with us back in 2006, that hit me like a ton of bricks. It was that number for some reason. So then I kind of had a journey with anger, I would say. So there's like the depression side, the anger side. You know, why can't I be over there fighting next to them? That kind of stuff. So I started kind of looking into some therapy and some things like that, and just reading stuff, listening to stuff, YouTube, you know, information on how to kind of work through those things. But I definitely realized that this is not like a short-lived phenomenon. This is something that I took these guys to war. Now we're all home, and this leadership job is not over yet. Because I'm sure we'll get into that more later, but yeah, I mean, I've kind of had a journey with, do I want to keep it to myself, or do I want to go, hey, you know, call up my friend and say, hey, dude, like, I need to talk. So I think a lot of us go through that.
Yeah.
Where we're losing people is they don't, you know, make that switch. Like, okay, I can't do this by myself anymore. I need to, you know, trip flare, or, you know, launch a flare. And get some help. So all I can say is I encourage people to get help when they need it.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole lot easier if you do, at least in theory.
Yeah. How did it feel being the person that other people leaned on when you were struggling yourself? Like, did it feel like you weren't allowed to struggle yourself, or were you, like, you couldn't tell them about your own struggles, or how did that work?
No, we had kind of a core group inside of our Marine Corps unit. There's a corporal that saw some of the things that were happening, and she started this Zoom call thing. And we all started keeping tabs on each other. We'd call once, twice a week, depending on what was going on. And we developed this really good, healthy rapport. I mean, sometimes it was a drunken rapport because, you know.
Yeah.
But overall, it was a very good thing because I know some of the people on those calls desperately needed that connection.
Yeah.
And they're out of the Marine Corps. They're going through it.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Should be good. That was a big one too.
Yeah, I want one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're doing these Zoom calls, and we're in a healthy way to staying in touch with each other. But where I really started seeing the need for mental health, really addressing certain things in, I think 2019, I think it was 2020, I couldn't sleep. I had a hell of a time sleeping. That's always been a struggle for me. And so rather than get up and pace back and forth and, you know, check the locks on the doors 75 times, I started running at night. And so I started making kind of a recreational, fun thing. I challenged myself. And I put on Facebook, I take a picture of my watch, getting ready to leave for a 5-mile run at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I started getting so many phone calls on those runs from other guys that couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And I was doing interval training, so the phone's ringing, I stopped, walk, you know, briskly. And I had some really intense phone calls while I was out there doing that from other guys that they didn't know how to tell people I can't sleep, you know. So it was kind of a healthy, fun activity that helped me live better. And there's a lot of people like, why is this dude running at night? I'm like, oh, it's better than the alternative, you know. So I'd have bags under my eyes, but I'd feel better. You know, I'd get back and I'd be sweating, disgusting, take a quick shower, go back to sleep. But the main takeaway from that time in my life was that there was a lot of people out there dealing with this, not sleeping. And, you know, I call guys with medical conditions, financial, marriage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that human connection is really important. And it's been a thing that's just developed and grown over the years that I realize that I'm good at helping people, you know, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the getting back thing, you know, for me was the hardest. And I didn't even have a combat deployment. But it was about 10 months that we were out, and you know, you get back from that, and time has continued, but you have not.
Right.
You know, because you're in this bubble with these people, and then you get back, and you know, you trying to figure out what to do, and people are talking about things that you've never heard of that weren't even around, you know, before you left, and now everybody knows about it, and it's just such a weird, like, time lapse, you know. And then I never slept better than I did then on a destroyer in, you know, the middle of the ocean, and then I got back, and same thing, couldn't sleep, you know, just for a while, and yeah, it's something that I think a lot of, not just veterans, but active duty, and a lot of people in quite a few fields, I think, have that same response. And luckily for me, I'd found motorcycles already, and that to me was what had helped a lot. Just, you know, it's something about putting the helmet on, starting the engine, and getting out. Like, for me, silenced a lot of the voices that I was hearing. And just like the noise that was building up, you know, and the second, like, just feeling the wind and riding around and just, you know, being alone with your thoughts and just kind of doing whatever, for me, it really was like therapy, you know, like wind therapy. And so this kind of leads into the point in your life where you found motorcycles. So you had all that stress building up, and then motorcycles entered your life. And how old were you when you first got on a motorcycle?
I think I was 44.
Okay. What made you decide to ride, especially after so long of not riding, saying that you never would, or?
So I had decided early on, I am an adrenaline freak to the max. I love all things theoretically dangerous. I've always liked going fast. I like shark diving. I like jumping off tall things with things attached to my feet, you know, bungee in Vegas was a blast. Anything that has the potential to be my demise is appealing to me for some reason. So, but the thing is, like, there's the feeling of taking a risk. It's not really that much of a risk. And then there's, when you ride every day, that's a real risk.
Yeah.
Especially if you ride at high speeds. And so I was kind of thinking, I know myself, I know my desire for adrenaline, and I know that for me, getting a bike is probably a bad decision. And then something just switched, and I can't, maybe it's just maturity, it was just divine intervention, you can call it anything you want. But I remember I was working on submarine base Point Loma, and I walked by this Honda Shadow, and I'm just like, why is that? I think I want one of those, So, and it was just the motorcycle itself, but it was olive drab, it was a cool color, and just, it looked nice. So I'm like, why am I thinking about this? And it bugged me for like a month. And I didn't like go looking for motorcycles online or anything like that. But you know how they have targeted ads?
Yeah.
I swear somehow they got into my subconscious.
Oh, yeah.
The same freaking bike pops up, I think, on like a Facebook ad or something. And I'm like, I'm going to go to a motorcycle shop. So I went down, this is in Temecula, anyway, I ended up buying a Triumph Bobber. And I went to get my motorcycle training at Riverside Harley-Davidson, got on a Harley 500, and it was game over. So I bought this Triumph Bobber off the showroom floor, did the 3 days of training. They barely passed me. I wasn't good at moving my head because I've got really good peripheral vision. So I don't turn like this as much as most people do. The instructors hated it. So I had this Army Special Forces guy as one of my instructors there, and he's, we had this like graduation activity sort of. We'd walk up and they'd say, "Yeah, you passed," or "Better luck next time," that kind of thing. And I walked up to him, and he's just like, "I almost didn't pass you," and so he made me promise to go work, do some work in parking lots and on turns and stuff like that. So I spent like my first 1,000 miles after I got my Triumph Bobber in parking lots,
doing that's a smart way to do it,
and I don't regret it. There's
people that, buy their first bike and they buy a 1,000cc sport bike and go on the freeway the first time,
That's a bad move.
A bad move, yeah. Why do you think riding resonates so much with veterans and the military community?
For one thing, we're risk takers. I mean, we're talking about 18-year-old kids that are going and invading countries. They're perfectly fine with jumping out of airplanes. We're built for it. I mean, yes, there's risk, but there's also freedom. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about all the fun things that go with it, but we're just wired for this kind of stuff. Whether it's fast cars, motorcycles, airplanes, whatever. Once you're a veteran, like, civilian life it's kind of lame. It's kind of like slow.
Yeah.
You want that adventure.
Right. When did you realize that this was going to be kind of bigger than yourself in terms of personal healing, like that the healing that motorcycles led to in your life could also benefit other veterans?
So I'd been in a pretty bad bout of depression from like age, let's just say 42 to 44. It happens to coincide with COVID. I had just had the pinnacle of my construction career, building a hotel in downtown San Diego. COVID hits. I go out to the desert for 14 months at 29 Palms, doing work on the Marine Corps base there, and go through a divorce, which I don't really talk about on these things too much, but I went through a period of my life where it was just, ugh. It wasn't good. And then I started climbing out of depression, and the bike thing happens. I left the desert, come back, do this work on a submarine base. And for some reason, when I got on that bike and started, so I've been a long-term photographer. 20 years I've been doing photography. I got an action camera, I got a motorcycle. I've got a friend that dares me to put my voice to good use. He says, "Dude, you got this $1 million voice. You got to start using it. Be on the radio, be on YouTube, be on something." I'm like, "What do I talk about?" "Whatever you know about." And I went, "Well, I'm talking to all these veterans all the time." So I've got this motorcycle footage, I've got this voice, and got the motorcycle, so I started combining them, and just something magic happened in that moment where I'm like, okay, so I can talk about these issues, give a nice backdrop, have adventure myself, bring myself out of this, funk. And it was kind of in those moments where I'm like, okay, if this is bringing me to this level of happiness when I've been down here somewhere, what could this do for all these veterans that I'm talking to? There's something there.
Yeah.
And so I've never been able to really get a big YouTube following and all that kind of stuff, but I've gotten so many messages from people that watch these things. Hey, that one video you did made me make a phone call. It made me go to the VA, made me do this, look at myself in the mirror differently. There's a big conversation happening because of these things.
Yeah, well, that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
Which means if you see this, message Dallas, let him know, that you saw this. But, before this, I guess I didn't know that part of your story, and it's interesting. Ours really coincides and aligns very similarly. And I was going through the same thing, big amount of depression, and I had gone from the pinnacle of my career at the time, which was the ship that I had been on and the deployment that I had been on with some of my best friends that I'll be best friends with my whole life, to the next command that I went to, and I spent like 8 months in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and no offense to the great state of Mississippi, but I did not have a good time there, especially during the summertime. Went through a divorce at the same time as well, and I got back to San Diego, and just needed to get off the ship, and I was living on the ship now because I didn't have a home to go home to.
Right.
Got a new motorcycle, and it's actually that one that's sitting back there right now.
That beautiful machine behind you?
Yeah, and now it looks different than when I first bought it, but I got that, and I rode it all over San Diego. I would get off work, and I would take it up on Point Loma. There's a spot on Naval Base Point Loma where it's just underneath the cemetery at the top. There's a bench under a tree that overlooks the entirety of San Diego, and I would ride up there all the time and just sit there, and watch the sunset. And I was like just going through it, but the motorcycle was kind of leading me out of it, and it has now led to so many things. This opportunity here, and being an Indian ambassador, and meeting all the people around me that have identified with the things that I've been doing simply because of doing it, having a motorcycle, getting a camera, and just starting to do stuff because it was helping me. And now I'm leaning so much more into this mental health angle of it because it's affected me personally, it's affected people I know personally, and if there's any way that I'm able to make it better, I figure why not use the small platform that I have to help guys that I would want to help in any way that I could. So
subscribe to Throttles Bottles.
He's not paid to say that.
No, definitely not, but right here.
All right, so we've now come full circle, and now you're on a motorcycle, and this is where Warriors of the Wind comes into play. So how did it come to be? Like, what were you trying to solve? You'd seen it work with yourself, or were you just trying to scale that model to other people, or talk me through that?
I'll tell you what, man, this journey, we were talking about it earlier, has been so fast and unexpected, nothing I could plan for. It's been kind of a series of events where people saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
So whether it's my buddy saying, hey, you got this voice, and then, which I've heard my whole life, but I never took it seriously. I'm like, okay, you got a voice too. But then I started realizing, okay, well, if I've got this voice and it's saying certain things, then it becomes more powerful. It can help people. So voice, YouTube channel, and then I have this magic happenstance kind of deal with, I meet with my sergeant in San Francisco. I'm doing some work up there. Construction work right next to a nunnery. You want to talk about some crazy spiritual stuff going on? I'm this nunnery and hospice. We're breaking up concrete curbs right next door to it. My sergeant that I combat deployed with is 10 minutes away. I'm there for 6 weeks, and we spent every night there's a church right up the hill. And he was a very devout Mormon, as well as his brother, who's also a Marine. We spent a lot of time together just talking about life, how we want to make a difference. And when I told them, I think I've got something powerful with this motorcycle thing, they both saw it. So this is crazy. I had my bike blessed by a priest at this nunnery. And I specifically requested that when they had a gathering. There was probably 15, 20 people there. The nuns literally like hide in the shadows during these kinds of things. They don't want to be seen on camera and stuff. They're awesome. Nuns are kind of terrifying. just so you know, like they're these small, frail looking women with these eyes that like stare into your soul. And they're the coolest people I've ever met. So I still want to go back there. So anyway, got the bike blessed. He did the holy water routine. I'm not Catholic, but I respect any kind of protection I can get, you know.
Yeah.
After that, in the following like 2.5 weeks, I was approached by 2 different Catholic priests that I'd never met. On their own, they just saw me and they said, I want to say a prayer for you and your bike. 2 Catholic priests, 2 Mormon bishops, again, without me asking for it. They just wanted to because they could tell, they could see something, I don't know, like this aura. They could tell that I'm a guy on a mission. And that really affected me because I'm like, these guys, they're really trying to like give me like this steroid injection of spirituality or, you know, something. I don't even know what to call it. But I think I felt a different kind of power after that I could really make a difference in the veteran community. Even if it didn't make sense to me necessarily, hey, okay, I'm a guy on a motorcycle and I think I can save the world. That's how it probably sounded to people at first. But I've got a list of things that I wrote down that I can read whatever you want me to. I think you kind of may have seen them. Mental health studies about motorcycling and what it can do for veterans are like incredible to read through, knowing that these guys are off in themselves because they can't feel right.
Well, now is as good a time as any
Okay.
to read those.
I'm going to go through this real quick.
This is the meat of the episode, right?
So there's a lot of mental health studies out there with motorcycles, but most of them are qualitative. They're like survey-based.
Right.
What I want to do with this, there's a lot of things I want to do with it, but what I want to do with it that I think is going to have the most good over time, I want to develop a motorcycles for veterans program through the VA. And I've already been at the Secretary of the VA's level as far as the office, just mentioning the idea. So I've got a long to-do list. Going back to that office is on the list.
Well, if anybody watching this has a contact high up that believes in this message Dallas, email Dallas, get
Please.
in contact with him to help him spread this.
So I have scoured mental health studies about motorcycling, veterans, mental health, PTSD, all the things. And I just went through, I've compiled this list, and I just went through on the drive up here. She drove, and she's hiding back there. That's Sarah. But let me just read these out loud.
Yeah.
So motorcycle mental health studies, we want to be the most comprehensive. We, Warriors of the One, want to be the most comprehensive, statistical significance nationwide, 500 veterans, all 50 states, 10 veterans per state. We build up a fire team at a time. So 4 corners is where I want to start this. It grows from there. Okay, here's what motorcycling does for, let's just say, veterans, but it could really be anybody who needs that, as you and I both know.
Yeah.
Okay, pulling from what I read. Let's see. Selective attention and sensory adaptation improved during riding. Heart rate and epinephrine increased. Stress hormones ratios shifted for the positive. Cortisol reduced by 25 to 28%. Adrenaline and cardio arousal elevated in a stress modulating manner. Camaraderie and identity reinforcement reduced isolation. Huge. Mindfulness, emotional regulation, and cognitive focus improved. Alleviate PTSD symptoms, foster accomplishment, reduce hyperarousal, hypervigilance, decrease intrusive thoughts and flashbacks, feelings of self-sufficiency, riding, self-mastery, and self-confidence. Riding equals those things. Adventure rides provide social support, identity reinforcement, and coping skills. Riding's immersive demands mirror the therapeutic mechanism. So riding a motorcycle is like going to see a shrink, basically.
Yeah.
More outdoor time. I love riding through national parks. We're trying to do this in places that facilitate riding in national parks as groups. Right. There's some magic there, man. You gotta.
Yeah,
I don't know how much you've done, but it's. So more outdoor time predicted lower PTSD symptomology. Riding demands focus and redirects mental energy to positivity. Peer support enhances coping strategies. Motorcycling, I put an asterisk by this one. Motorcycling consistently shows cortisol decreased and focused engagement indicative of psychological benefits. Like over and over and over again, whether it's these guys filled out surveys. I've got a survey going that I've been doing for the last couple of years as well. The first warrior, the one that I brought in, every time he rides, he's supposed to. He doesn't always do it, but before and after the ride, he does a PTSD, like the DSM-5 questionnaire, which is, how are you feeling today? Are you sad? You know, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So he does that before and after because we're tracking, we're creating parametric data over a very large data set eventually. And eventually I can go to the VA and go, here's the evidence.
Right.
There's equine therapy. There's all these, music therapy, art therapy, motorcycle therapy. We hear wind therapy, but it's just kind of like, it's a saying, I'm talking real wind therapy.
Yeah.
Something we can document, we can fund, we can, give reduced price motorcycles, maybe even free. And they can do it instead of taking pills.
Right.
Because I've been out on rides, sitting in restaurants with these big buff biker looking dudes, and they're talking about, when I got on my Harley, I stopped taking pills, that the VA was doling out to me. I've heard that a lot. I've also heard a lot that motorcycles saved my life. So, dangerous, life-saving.
So, when you're dealing with mental health, success isn't always obvious, and you've clearly seen like measurable differences. What changes have you seen in people? Like, do you have specific examples? You don't have to name names or anything or drop any information like that, but do you have success stories?
Absolutely.
Like that? Okay.
I will name names because, so we have brought in our first warrior of the wind. He is a guy we kind of stumbled upon. Basically, he contacted, I forget how it all came to pass, but long story short, Sarah and I both ride with CVMA. Combat Vets Motorcycle Association got contacted by somebody on the VA side of the fence. Hey, there's this veteran in Farmersville, California that needs some help moving boxes because his house needs to be, or apartment needs to be fumigated, or he's going to get evicted. So at the time, I wasn't yet CVMA. I was just tagging along. I wanted to join at that point, and I was working on it. But like between 5 and 10 of us roll up to James's apartment complex. We're in the parking lot. They start preparing to, get his place put together or taken apart, a little bit of both. And I'm talking to James in the parking lot. He's using a walker. He's extremely depressed. You can see it in his eyes, and I've got video evidence of all this. Very, very sad. But on the spot, being surrounded by veterans, being around motorcycles, this guy started opening up. And he even told me himself, he's like, I can't believe I'm sharing some of these things with you. I've never told anybody these things. So I said, you know what? Let's plan on a podcast. If you're willing, I think you could help a lot of people. This dude had been avoiding people for 39 years. Sad as can be, antisocial. And when we finished up the packing that day, Sarah and I took him out for a ride. And he was wearing his late father's brain bucket and vest and whatever else he had on. No vest that day. Anyway, he's wearing his father's gear. And he hadn't ridden in, I believe, 25 years. He's on the back of Sarah's bike. I see his face lighting up. We got a fist bump while we're riding. I'm riding the bobber, so I don't really take passengers, but she loves taking passengers. Anyway, we get back to his place, or we drop him off. We plan for a podcast. He and I had a podcast, and he opened up, shared a lot of details. The guy's got severe survivor's guilt. He was somewhere out of the country, and basically he swapped duties with another sailor. The sailor was killed filling his duty, and that just ate him alive for decades after that. So certain things kind of happened. We kept in touch. He started joining us on rides in his follow-behind vehicle. So he's driving a Cadillac behind a formation ride, doing things like funeral escorts and veterans ride, which is a huge ride in Central California. Something like, I think, so 400 bikes the first time I ever did it. I think it's between 250 and 400 the 3 times I've ridden it. And James is back there in his Cadillac following us, pretending he's one of us, Well, now we got him a bike. We Somebody donated it to Warriors of the Wind Foundation. We then passed it off to James after he got motorcycle safety training knocked out. He got his license, checked out by a doctor, all that kind of stuff, liability stuff. His demeanor is completely different than the guy I met. He smiles, he jokes, he's social, he's going out, he's joined American Legion Riders. So watching James go from this depressed guy using a walker, he's got a scooter, he's got these things that he doesn't think he can live without. His mental health dramatically improved over a fairly short period of time. His body followed in suit. So I've asked him, like, how much do you think of this was mental? Your physical limitations before you met us, how much of that do you think was mental? He said, probably about 70%. So now that he's opening up mentally, his body's healing, he's out there riding a 500-pound bike, 5, 6, whatever the number is. And he's just a different dude. That's all there is to it. And he is what I'm building the miniseries around, is this guy I've watched him heal. And he could be any veteran out there under similar circumstances. Yeah. It's a story that could be duplicated over and over again.
Yeah, scalable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So before we wrap this right up, I want to slow it down a little bit for this segment that we call the Final Pour. This episode has covered a lot of ground: service, identity, loss, movement, responsibility. And so for this last part, I want to kind of zoom back out. And when you look at everything that you've lived, the Marine Corps, the years after, finding motorcycles, building Warriors of the Wind, what are you most proud of?
I'm just along for the ride. It's been a journey. What am I most proud of? But I'm still here, for one thing. That I'm able to help people. I'm working as a substitute teacher, putting a little dose of positivity in these kids' lives. I'm proud of a lot of things. Proud to have a partner I love who's hiding back there. Most. I think the fact that I'm still here is probably the thing I should be the proudest of, because I was not on a great path there for a while.
Not just still here, but also making sure others still are as well, which I think is probably the best thing people can do for each other. Was there a moment when you realized that this was bigger than yourself, that you kind of had to keep going at that point?
San Francisco, definitely. Then we had some things happen at our bike night where, some big names are paying attention to us, and it's extremely humbling, some of the people that we're getting connected with, and I'm sure you know that feeling well. Just the fact that, really good people with influence see the value in what we're doing and want to help connect us with the right people. It's incredibly humbling and validating at the same time. So,
what does it feel like when you realize or when you hear that someone is still here because of you and because of the foundation that you've started and the movement that you've started?
There's been a few. It's one of those things that I'm proud of it. It feels good. For me, I attribute it to something higher than me. This is a calling. It's a calling. It's a mandate. I feel like I have an obligation to my Marines even to this day, especially my Marines. But that's kind of expanded its reach to other veterans. Nationwide. I want to help everybody.
And you've lost people along the way, and we both have. How do you carry the weight of those while still looking out for the ones that are still here, that you're still, responsible for?
Pretty much any negative emotion I have at this point is used as fuel. Whether it's, some people think what I'm doing is dumb, and I just love those people. That's my best fuel right there. But the sadness component of this, and I have lost a lot of people, is I'm honoring them, I'm honoring their families, and I don't have time to sit around mourning people. Instead, I'm going to use that to help other people that need it.
Yeah. So I want to end this by giving you the floor. For the veteran or anyone that needs it, listening right now who feels disconnected, tired, like they don't fit in, kind of lost their way or isolated, what do you want them to hear?
I know how it feels to wake up every morning and feel like your wick is completely burnt out, is the best way I've ever figured out how to describe it. There was a long period of time where I prayed I wouldn't wake up. I wake up and kind of wish I didn't. And to those people who are feeling that way, just know you never know what that one day is going to look like where, like, holy crap, all these days that I've been hating my life were leading up to this one day that changed everything. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's a machine, happenstance, whatever. At this point, I believe there are no coincidences. So just hang on, because your day may suck for like day after day after day, week after week, even years. But it takes that one day to change everything.
Yeah. Well, what you've built isn't about motorcycles alone. You know, it's about movement and connection and giving people a reason to keep going. And I think that's something to raise a glass, or in this case, a bottle to you.
Cheers again.
To Warriors of the Wind and to those that are still with us.
Thank you.
I think that's a great place to wrap up. The microphone is yours. What are you working on right now? What's the next chapter for you and Warriors of the Wind? Any announcements?
You're catching me at a very interesting time. We took us, 2 months to get this scheduled with all of our various commitments.
Yeah.
In the last 2 months, I've really been working on finalizing the pilot for a mini-series. The mini-series is designed to get to the people that are afraid to ask for help, that feel like they're all alone. TV is the best way to do that I'm aware of. So my hope is that we end up on network television, sending a good message that, hey, like, there's a lot of fun to be had out here. You're hiding there in your corner in the shadows. We're out here on motorcycles. Join us.
Yeah.
Let's go hit the national parks together. So still figuring out a few things. I'm still editing this thing. We're going to be submitting it to Angel Studios, hopefully by the end of February. I want to have it kind of sort of viewable by mid-February to get some feedback and kind of preview kind of stuff. But I'm working with some people with Hollywood experience that have been really generous with their time, and they believe in what we're doing. And so I got to finish editing this thing. I got to do the voiceover is going to play a major role in it. My voice has got to be right, and I've got to have the right things to say mapped out. So there's some interesting pressure on my shoulders right now, but it's also really exciting. So for anybody who's part of the Angel Studios Guild, it's called the Angel Guild. It's a voting platform. I think it's $20 a month, and we're going to basically put out this roughly a 15-minute teaser talking about the journey of two veterans who connected by happenstance and started this motorcycling thing, and basically just tell the story. So that should be hitting the Angel Guild for voting, which is, I've heard 1 million to 2 million is the last numbers I'm hearing as far as not population, but the number of people that are able to vote for this movie to either green light it or not green light it. Regardless of whether it gets green lighted, it's going to get a lot of publicity and awesome. Hopefully some interest from good people that want to help.
Yeah.
So, but the idea is all about, it's built around veterans empowerment. It's giving veterans a platform to share their healing journey, inspire other veterans that are just like them. So the way the series is gonna work, still figuring out the details, but we give a veteran a motorcycle. The veteran takes the motorcycle. They got to meet prerequisites. They're selected a certain way, legal documents. They got to be safe to ride, mentally sound, all that kind of stuff. But they're on a journey. They're given a motorcycle. Over a year's time, whoever gave them that motorcycle gives sponsorship with the bike, but they get marketing. They're basically getting a marketing employee for the price of a motorcycle. The veteran is then going to put out social media content, doing whatever the sponsoring company may want them to do, talking about maybe it's their local community, maybe it's a new motorcycle being released. Ideally, the sponsor for this would be a major motorcycle brand, but we don't know how it's going to unfold. So it's a marketing machine. We're making suicide prevention make business sense. So this is like I said, we're marketing for somebody who's generous to us, and it's a healing journey for the individual veteran. The idea here is we build this documentary over and over and over again through, the biographical model. These guys are telling their own stories, and it's just a beautiful story waiting to be written. So it's pretty exciting stuff. I know it's going to help a lot of people, and I guess I feel like I got to end with this. America's going through it right now. We got some bad things happening, and I think this is a story that has the potential to heal a lot of things that are going wrong. I think we need some healing in our country, and I think this is a good vehicle to do that. So, at a good time.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything. And that's it for this ride. Huge thank you to you, Dallas.
Thank you very much
for taking the time to share stories with us today. Follow him at Warriors the Win Foundation and all of his social media pages linked in the bio, and stay tuned for the next event. Until next time, ride safe, drink slow, and we'll see you in the next episode of Throttles and Bottles. Cheers.
One more.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Thank you for the sponsors of today's episode. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Special thank you to John Gagliotti for opening up his hangar for us. It's pretty incredible here. And thank you to my first ever sponsor, my barber Craig, sitting right over there. His truck's right in the background, who created this connection, and he made today's episode possible. He also gave me this haircut, so.
Sharp, man. Looks good.
Yeah. Thank you to the sponsors of today's episode. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this, and we look forward to having more.